Hi there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be working with the Simon Says Stamp April 2017 card kit. Now you'll notice this video is moving rather quickly. This stamp set required quite a bit of coloring, and I try to show you guys as much of the steps as I can. So I'm going to talk you through everything. My voice just may not be completely in sync with the video that you're seeing. So to start out with this first card, I use Bristol cardstock and I use Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies to cut out 5 3/4 rectangles, 2 of those. And on one of them I use the Tri-Square craft die from Simon Says Stamp. So you'll see that I went ahead and laid one on top of the other, and I just traced with the pencil along those squares so that I would know where to stamp my giraffe that's going to be peeking through. I use Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink to stamp the giraffes, and here I'm using Prismacolor pencils to color them in. The numbers I'm using are listed below for you. I've lined up the sentiment I chose to use, Wild Thing I Think I Love You, and again I'm using Simon Says Intense Black ink to stamp that. Any of the black ink you see throughout the video is going to be the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. Here I'm using Lawn Fawn Wild Rose ink to stamp some hearts just scattered around the front of my panel. I'm then going to pop that panel up with some Scotch foam tape. And I'll place that on top of the panel with the colored giraffes. This gives some great dimension and it really seems like they're peeking through those squares. Then I decided that the saturation on the hearts I had stamped wasn't quite as deep as I had wanted it to be. So here I'm using my Copic marker. This is color R20, just to color over top of those, make them a little more vibrant. And I'm going to pop that on top of a purple card base. Then I decided I wanted to color in the sentiment there, so I'm using the same Prismacolor green colored pencil that I used for the eyes of the giraffe. I'll then add some Spectrum Noir shimmer pen. And that completes card number 1. For card number 2, I'm using Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, and I've cut this to a custom size of 7 by 4.5 inches. And I decided I wanted to do a stack of these animals, so I'm using my Misty to go ahead and create that. You'll see off to the side there, I've already used Lawn Fawn's grassy border die to cut some grass to go along the bottom of my scene. I'm again using my Prismacolor colored pencils to color the animals in. I've left out the giraffe to save some time, but I have colored him exactly the same as the previous card, and the colors I'm using are listed below for you. Using my Misty once again, I'm going to add the sentiment Wild About You, and then I will use the row of hearts and the green ink that came in the kit to stamp a few lines above and below that. Then using my ATG gun, I will attach the grass border along the bottom. I have these, in my stash I have these Doodlebug Eerie eyes, and I thought they looked really adorable on all these animals, so I went ahead and added a pair to each of them. I think it just gives the card a little something extra. Using my black gel pen, I went around and highlighted the whiskers, the noses, just anything that I thought needed to be brought to the forefront a little more. And that completes card number 2. For card number 3, I've again used my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies. I cut one 5 by 3 3/4 out of the Lawn Fawn plaid paper that came in the kit, and another 4.5 by 3 1/4 out of Bristol Smooth cardstock. Here I'm using my Misty to stamp the sentiment Wild Thing, I Think I Love You, using the red ink that came in the kit. I'm going to center the white panel on top of the plaid panel, and then those 2 panels on top of a white A2 size card base. Off camera, I have colored and fussy cut an elephant, and I've used the same Prismacolor colored pencils that I used on the previous card. And then here I'm going to use one of the mini action wobblers that came in the kit to attach the elephant in the center there. And to finish that guy up, I'm going to use some glue dots to attach some googly eyes. That will complete card number 3. For card number 4, I'm going to do some masking. I'm using masking paper by Inka Dinka Doo, and here I'm stamping out the giraffe, lion, and penguin. I'm going to then fussy cut out each of those masks. So here you can see that I've laid out the design of my card. I'm first going to stamp the penguin and the lion because I want them in the front. And then once I have them stamped, I'm going to go ahead and apply the masks. Then I can stamp my giraffe, and it will look like he is sitting behind the other 2. I should also mention I'm stamping this on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I've cut that down to 4.5 by 3 1/4 using a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. Here I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, and you'll see I have all of the numbers used listed below. I've cut a plaid panel using the Lawn Fawn stitch rectangle die that measures 5 by 3 3/4, and I'm going to use Scotch foam tape to attach my colored panel to the top of that rainbow panel. Here I'm adding some shimmer using my Spectrum Noir glitter pen. I realized I forgot to color the giraffe's eyes, so I'm going in with one of my green Zig pens. And then I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "Wild Thing, I Think I Love You," on the inside of the card. And using my ATG gun, I'll attach the panel to the front. I've stamped one of the larger hearts that came in the stamp set on some red cardstock, fussy cut that, attached it with a glue dot, and am now adding some glitter. That will complete card 4. For card number 5, I lost some of the footage here, so I'm going to quickly talk you through it. Out of the blue plaid paper, I've cut a 5 by 3 3/4 rectangle. Then I lined that rectangle up with just the top of my card base, and I cut from both of those a 2.5 inch circle. I also cut two 2-inch circles from Bristol Smooth cardstock, and on those I stamped the penguin. I've colored the penguins the exact same way as I did in the previous card using the Zig markers. I then sandwiched some fishing line between the 2 penguin circles, and then again sandwich the fishing line between the blue plaid card panel and the front of the card. Here I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment on some scrap black cardstock, and I'm using Simon Says Stamp fine detail embossing powder. I'm going to trim that down and using my ATG gun attach it to the front panel. And here I'm going to show you how that penguin is going to spin when you wind him up and the recipient opens the card. And that'll complete card number 5. For card number 6, I'm stamping directly on the card base, and I'm using all of the animal stamps as well as all 4 colors of the ink that came in the card kit. I'm using my Misty to help line everything up here. And this will also help me get a really crisp line for all of the colors. Using some scrap black cardstock, I have cut out a stitch sentiment strip from My Favorite Things, and I've also gone ahead and heat embossed on that my sentiment as well as some rows of the hearts that came in the kit. I'm going to pop that up using some Scotch foam tape and place it in the center of my card. And then for a little extra embellishment, I'm going to add some Nuvo drops. The colors that I'm using are Dandelion, Apple Green, Ripened Pumpkin, and Red Berry. And that will complete card number 6. You'll see when I lift it up in a minute here the great dimension that I was able to get with the Nuvo drops. Moving on to card number 7, I decided to use one of the tags that came in the kit. I am stamping on that with, again, Simon Says Intense black ink. And then I'm going to use the red ink to stamp some of the hearts. Here I decided I wanted to add a few more hearts, and I used the Lawn Fawn Wild Rose ink to stamp those around the sentiment. I'm also stamping the giraffe on some scrap yellow cardstock. I'll color him in using the same Prismacolor pencils that I previously used. I'm also going to use a rainbow of Prismacolor pencils to color in the sentiment on the tag. I've cut a panel measuring 3 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches from the purple plaid paper, and I've centered that on the front of my purple card base. Here I'm cutting some baker's twine in a rainbow of colors to add to my tag. I'm going to pop the tag as well as the giraffe up with some Scotch foam tape. I'm going to secure down my baker's twine with some glue dots, and that will complete card number 7. I've cut a panel of Neenah Solar White down to 4 by 5 1/2 inches, and here I'm going to be using my masking paper again to stamp a row of 3 penguins. I'm using my Copic markers to color in the penguins, and the 3 colors I'm using are below. I'm going to create a little banner for my penguin to be holding. I just stamped the sentiment on some scrap red paper and cut a banner edge. Here I'm scoring the opposite end of that, and I'm going to tape my toothpick underneath where I've scored there. I also took my craft knife and cut a little opening at the top of the far penguin's wing. Here I'm popping the banner up with some Scotch foam tape, and you'll see I'm going to slide the edge of the toothpick down in between his wing. I'm going to secure that to the front of my card base. And then pop that whole panel up on top of another white card base. Finally, I'm going to add some Spectrum Noir Sparkle Pen. I die cut a heart out of the same red cardstock I used for the banner. I'll attach that here with a glue dot, and that completes card 8. Here I'm using Nuvo Mousse in the color Aquamarine to create a sky background for my card. I'm just applying that using a regular sponge, and I love the sheen that this Nuvo Mousse gives off. This came in a previous card kit. I'm attaching at the bottom of the card a border strip of grass. Again, I've used the Lawn Fawn grassy border die to create that. I've stamped the lion on Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm using my Copic markers to color him in. The colors I'm using are listed below. After I laid out my scene, I then decided that I wanted an additional critter in there, so I also stamped the giraffe, and I used the exact same colors to color him in. You'll see him appear a little bit later. I have fussy cut the lion, and here I decided I wanted to add one more strip of grass below, so I've used the same border, just attaching that with my ATG gun. I'm going to slide the lion down in between those two layers. I've also created some clouds using the Lawn Fawn puffy cloud border die, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment using the green ink that came in the kit. And there you can see the giraffe that I added. So I'm going to turn this into a shaker card. I have cut from some rainbow paper a frame, and I cut that using the frame that came with the My Favorite Things Blueprints 32. I'm just using some multi-matte medium there to attach my acetate window. I'm going to build up a border around my frame using Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to do a double layer of that so my sequins have lots of room to move around in. Once I have my frame completed, I'm going to add some rainbow sequins to the top of my card, and then I will add the frame to the very top, sandwiching the sequins in between the acetate window. And that'll complete card 9. Since there were some tags that came in this kit, I decided to do 2 tags instead of a 10th card. So here I've just created a rainbow background. I've attached that using my ATG gun, and then I've just trimmed around the edges. There I'm adding a purple border up top. I have used the MFT sentiment strip and cut off the edges to stamp my giraffe on. I'm going to add him with foam tape to the top layer there. On the back, I have stamped my sentiment and colored that in using some of the same Prismacolor markers that I previously used. I'm going to add some rainbow baker's twine there. and then I cut a few hearts out of that same red cardstock I had previously used, and I'm adding those to both sides of the tag. For the second tag, I decided to go with an outdoor scene again. I've attached a scrap of the blue plaid paper for a background and used another leftover piece of the grassy border die I had previously cut, as well as the leftover trimming at the top there of the plaid paper. I did go ahead and add another layer of that grassy border at the bottom, and I've attached the penguin in between the two layers of grass. For the penguin, I used Prismacolor colored pencils, same as I had previously used on some of the cards, and I fussy cut him out. Here I'm adding a few more of the hearts I had cut out, and I'm just attaching those using glue dots. I'm adding some shimmer with my Spectrum Noir pen. I'll add some rainbow baker's twine at the top there. Add one more heart on the back, and that will complete the 2 tags for this card set. Here is a quick look back at all of the cards we've created today. Close-ups of the cards as well as a full list of supplies can be found at my blog post listed in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.